How do you feel about the idea that permitting, licensing, or otherwise regulating a profession in your state or your country automatically makes that profession safer? Do you agree with that? Have you had experiences that go against that idea? I can tell you that I have, and if you subscribe to the blog, then you know that well already. But that's what Bethany Hall-Long, one of Delaware senators, tried to get across the other night during a Senate session, that, you know, if you don't get a permit that's available to you through the state, you're being unsafe. You're practicing a rogue practice. You know, the context here is midwifery. Midwives being the expert in childbirth, you know, having taken 3 to 5 years of education, years of apprenticeship until they finish a certain skill set, plus national boards like other professions. Yet in Delaware, they're so regulated that they are being regulated out of a profession. They already have been regulated out of a profession because they can't obtain all the requirements to get their permits. So, you know, I was trying to ask legislators this all week in different terms, and finally Senator Hall-Long made it clear that this was her position, that if you are not permitting or licensing that profession, then basically that profession is not safe. In terms of childbirth, you know, I tried to ask legislators, what about the deaths that occurred at the hospital? You know, Senator Hall-Long said that there were 2 injuries and 1 death, all revolving around children, and that was the catalyst basically for this bill that heightened disciplinary actions for midwives who practice without a permit or a license. And I'm very sympathetic to that. What I need to know, and what senators needed to know before they voted, was what are the details surrounding these injuries and this death? Would it have been prevented if it was in a hospital? Or would it not have even mattered? You know, for example, there's a condition called anencephaly, which is literally an incurable situation. That child is going to pass away at some point. I think there are children who have lived for several years after birth, but usually they die within several hours. And that would not have been able to be prevented in a hospital. It just is what it is. So we don't know anything about this death that is quoted by Senator Hall-Long. So I ask again, what about the deaths that occur in the hospital? What about circumcision-related deaths that could have been prevented if they didn't circumcise in the first place? What about postpartum hemorrhaging deaths or related deaths, you know, after an unnecessary C-section? You know, one mom told me of her birth here in Delaware and how the doctor didn't know how to handle her childbirth, and an obstetrician didn't know how to handle it. And at one point told her husband, look, you need to choose your wife or your baby. Choose one. And Dad said, no, you get back in there. If I have to choose, you shouldn't be back out here. You should be in there, you know, trying to save them both. And, you know, luckily, by the grace of God, both were fine, and the child is now 7 or 8, and mom is fine. But the doctor and the hospital, both regulated, licensed, permitted, the doctor didn't know how to handle this childbirth situation. And the mom said after she reviewed the records, there was no reason why he shouldn't have been able to, being an obstetrician with medical training, there should have been no reason why he shouldn't have been able to deal with it much better than happened. And he actually has since lost his ability to practice, which is good. Brings me to another point. If you have a problem with your doctor and it's a serious problem, file a formal complaint. Not to get doctors out of their practices, but because they need to be reprimanded when things go wrong too. You know, but back to the original idea, Senator Hall-Long called our midwives rogue practitioners because they aren't permitted, but yet they can't obtain their permit. So, maybe you can help me understand this a little bit more. Go down just below the video, hit the comments. Let me know if you think that if permitting or licensing or regulating a profession makes it automatically safer, or if that doesn't make it safer at all.